Despite the significant advancements in science and technology, the modern world continues to suffer from persistent problems that we often fail to address, or worse, choose to ignore. Wars between nations, the growing mental health crisis, and the torturous, hidden realities of corporate life continue to haunt us, despite our pretensions and willful ignorance. Deep down, we all sense that something is fundamentally flawed in the model of reality upon which our civilization is built. There must be a deeper truth we've overlooked. Mystic philosopher Jiddu Krishnamurti, in conversation with quantum physicist David Bohm, observed that the human psyche has not evolved at all. While he acknowledged the progress of biological and technological evolution, he firmly rejected the idea that the inner psychological structure of human beings has undergone any real transformation. Although outwardly we have built supercomputers and rockets that travel through space, inwardly we remain barbaric. Despite tremendous progress in technology, we haven't solved our deepest problems. In fact, the crises have become more intense and dangerous. Therefore he intuits that time, progression, growth and evolution are not real concepts in the psychological domain. War, mental health collapse, climate change, soil degradation, plastic pollution, and mass extinction of species, we are entangled in a net of problems, which we either refuse to face or pretend can be solved by more thought, more systems, or external authorities like politicians or philosophers. Thus, we deny the need to change our inner outlook. Look more closely at how human beings relate to one another. The endless cycles of miscommunication, disagreement, and emotional conflict are not limited to individuals. They manifest in disputes between nations, religions, and even philosophical schools of thought. Krishnamurti, therefore, reflects that psychological freedom arises only through the ending of knowledge and the rejection of all forms of authority, including the ego. True freedom, he suggests, comes when we dissolve the mental constructs we have built, confront the reality of death, and open ourselves to direct communion with the cosmic consciousness. Amazingly, these insights are not new. Ancient sages were surprisingly aware of this fact. They grappled with the same fundamental questions we struggle with today: who am I? How am I related to the universe? What is the nature of reality? The sacred texts of Sanatana Dharma, especially Vedanta, offer profound insights that closely align with Krishnamurti's perspective. The Vedas suggest that the barriers created by the ego, expressed through competition, jealousy, violence, and greed, cloud our perception and prevent us from seeing reality as it truly is. In fact, the word Vedanta literally means the end of knowledge, the point where all mental concepts dissolve. Let us explore the nature of consciousness as understood in Vedanta. In this video, we will examine the nature of consciousness through the lens of both ancient Vedantic wisdom, and the insights of some of the greatest Western philosophers. Stay with us till the end, as we connect their seemingly different worldviews into one unified realization. Philosopher Heidegger described human beings as Dasein, which means being in the world. This concept challenges the simplistic notion that a human being is just a combination of mind and body, as suggested in Cartesian dualism by Descartes. Heidegger believed that our very existence is ontologically connected to the world around us. The world does not exist independently, it arises within our consciousness. We are the portal through which existence opens itself, and all beings rest on our consciousness. In this sense, the human being is not separate from the world around, he is being in the world. Jean-Paul Sartre expanded this with his ontological division between two types of beings. 1. Being in itself, unconscious matter. 2. Being for itself, consciousness that is aware of itself. Sartre argued that consciousness is always aware of itself, but has no inherent content. He called this nothingness. For him, consciousness always reaches out towards something else, it negates itself to become aware of being. Thus, he saw consciousness as an active force that never remains fixed in itself but constantly moves towards something beyond. In his view, consciousness is a kind of nothingness, which always negates itself to become what it is not. Vedanta would critique his ontological split between living and non-living matter. This split, Vedantins argue, deprives us of our true nature, ananda, bliss, and results in existential anxiety, further intensifying the world's suffering. Vedanta asserts the opposite: consciousness is not an emergent property of the brain or body. It is the field of reality in which all beings, both conscious and unconscious, arise. It is beyond both being and non-being. It is trans-ontological, pure, self-luminous reality. Unlike Sartre's definition, Vedantic consciousness does not negate itself. It reveals itself and actualizes its potential through its intrinsic nature, called Maya. It doesn't depend on any external object for validation. One may doubt everything, the body, the world, even thoughts, but not the fact that one is aware. This awareness is fundamental, the ground upon which all knowledge and existence depend. Therefore, Vedanta would say that both meaning and meaninglessness are mental constructions. Life itself is meaning of its own. The very fiber of our existence is impregnated with meaning. Let us understand the structure of cognition. Every act of knowing involves 1. A knower, the subject. 2. The objects, such as the physical world, thoughts, and emotions, are the known, and the process that connects them is knowing. Neuroscience can explain part of this process. However, if we ask, what knows the mind itself? What is the content of any experience? How does inert matter develops consciousness of its own? We arrive at something subtler. Vedanta posits that consciousness is the field in which both the mind and its objects arise. It is the substratum that exists before the subject-object split. Every cognition necessitates consciousness but not the vice versa. When we trace awareness to its root, the triad of knower, known, and knowing collapses into pure witnessing. Every experience, thought, emotion and mental representation of the world submerges back to its origin, consciousness. It is eternal dance between consciousness and its intrinsic energy Maya. Thus, consciousness is beyond both subject and the object, it transcends both knower and the known, it is the luminous, self-evident foundation of all knowing. It is one but can appear as many. It is both potentiality and actuality. The sacred Vedic texts, Upanishads, assert this essence repeatedly. For instance, Kena Upanishad emphasizes that behind all sense faculties and mental activity is something deeper, awareness itself. Consciousness illuminates the mind, enabling it to perceive, feel, and think. Consciousness is not an effect, it is the ground. If existence must be known through consciousness, then consciousness is more fundamental than existence. All knowledge of time, space, causality, and matter requires consciousness. But consciousness exists even in the absence of objects, such as during a deep sleep state. It witnesses presence and absence alike. It is beyond abstraction, and is foundational. Philosopher Immanuel Kant made a groundbreaking observation: time and space are not external entities, but internal frameworks of the mind. He divided reality into two categories. 1. Noumena, the unknowable thing in itself. 2. Phenomena, the world as it appears to us. According to Kant, time and space are built-in ways our mind uses to make sense of experience. He believed we are naturally aware of time and space, which is why we can understand things like mathematics even without learning them through direct experience. We never access the world directly but only through these cognitive molds. And time, Space and causality are the framework that our mind uses to give context to the impressions collected by our sense organs. Vivekananda says that Kant understood the concept of Maya, however he was frightened to go beyond that. If time and space are properties of the mind, and the mind itself arises in consciousness, then consciousness is beyond time and space. It is not located. It is both local and non-local, as the Upanishads suggest, an all-seeing eye through which the entire world is perceived. It serves as an interface where the boundary between noumenon and phenomenon begins to dissolve, as philosophers like Schopenhauer and Bernardo Kastrup have also proposed. People encountering mystical experience, deep psychedelic experience, and near-death experience have realized that consciousness transcends both time and space. It can dissociate itself into mental fragments such as human being, animals, plants, and fungi, and experience itself from distinct point of views. The Upanishads say, it is both being and becoming. It is both quantum and cosmic. It is both microscopic and macroscopic. It is distant, it is near. It is within all, it is without all this. The eye does not go there, nor the mind. It is the ground where all exists. Creation is a mental projection. Vedanta offers a radical conclusion: there was no real act of creation. Creativity is the intrinsic nature of consciousness, which translates chaos into the music, and establishes consistent laws out of the random dance of particles. Consciousness did not create the world in time. It simply unfolds as an experience unfolds in our mind, through its intrinsic power, Maya. Time and space are what unfolding of consciousness looks like when somebody assumes the role of an observer, and looks at it from second-person perspective. For the consciousness, it is all now experiencing its own potentiality, simultaneously experiencing both being and becoming. Western thinkers have long debated being versus becoming. Let's break this down. Heraclitus saw change as fundamental. You cannot step into the same river twice, he said. For him, reality is not a static thing but a continuous process of becoming. Just like how fire constantly transforms or how water flows, Heraclitus believed that everything is in flux. The world is a dance of opposites, night and day, life and death. Parmenides, however, said that change is an illusion. According to him, only being is real, eternal, indivisible, and unchanging. The world of change, motion, and transformation is mere deception of the senses. What is, he argued, and what is not cannot be. This means that appearance and disappearance, existence and non-existence are illusory perceptions created by our senses. Plato tried to reconcile these views by proposing two realms: the world of forms, which is eternal, perfect, and unchanging, being, and the world of appearances, which is mutable, deceptive, and ever-changing, becoming. For example, a beautiful flower may wilt and die, but the abstract form of beauty never changes. Aristotle, Plato's student, disagreed with the idea of a separate perfect world. Instead, he proposed that everything in our world has potentiality and actuality. A seed becomes a tree not by copying an ideal tree but by actualizing its own potential. Thus, he merged being and becoming into a dynamic unfolding of nature. Hegel brought this evolution into modernity. He said that reality progresses through a dialectical process: thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. The struggle between being and non-being gives rise to becoming. A simple now moment negates itself into not now and produces a new now. In this way, reality is a process of contradictions resolving into higher unity, an evolution of consciousness he called Geist, spirit. Vedanta, however, offers a unique response. All of these categories, being, non-being, and becoming, are appearances projected by the Maya onto the screen of consciousness. These are categories of apparent reality, which is relative to our senses. They are valid at the level of mind, but the ultimate reality is beyond them. It precedes both being and becoming. It is not fixed being, yet it appears as becoming. The consciousness is undifferentiated reality which can differentiate, arise, dissolve and yet transcends them. Like as if eternity wrapped into a moment, it embodies all contradictions and yet remains whole. Modern science, especially quantum mechanics, echoes this paradox. According to quantum theory, particles exist in a state of potentiality until observed. The act of observation collapses the wave function into a specific outcome, meaning the observer plays a role in actualizing what is real. This aligns strikingly with Vedantic insight: the world appears in consciousness, not outside of it. Just as in quantum physics, where measurement and consciousness influence outcome, Vedanta suggests that creation is not a physical event, but a projection shaped by perception. So when Vedanta says creation is a myth, it does not mean that the world doesn't appear, it means that the world does not exist independently of the one who perceives it. Reality is not an objective domain separate from us, it is a display arising in awareness. While matter is how mind appears outside, mind is how matter is experienced from inside. All mental models fail to grasp consciousness. Vedanta would explain this using a conceptual model, but they would warn that don't take the model seriously. Just like when somebody is pointing their finger to the moon, you are supposed to look at the moon at the sky but not to the tip of the finger. The point here is to experience and understand the essence of the model rather than taking the model for granted as the alternative of the reality. Therefore, Vedanta means the end of the knowledge. The end of all the concepts and contradictions. The end of philosophizing. The end of mind itself. It is just a pure being, which cannot be grasped through the language. An experiential dance of illusion unto the screen of consciousness. What does all this really mean for our world today? If we look closely, most of our problems, conflict, environmental destruction, loneliness, inequality, are born from a single root, the illusion that we are separate. Separate from each other, from nature, from the cosmos itself. This illusion is what Vedanta calls the ego, the false I that arises when consciousness identifies with the body and mind. But what happens when we truly recognize that consciousness is not limited to this ego? What happens when we see that the same light of awareness shines through you, me, every human, every animal, every tree? In that moment, we are no longer strangers in a divided world, we are expressions of the same underlying reality. The illusion of separateness dissolves. And what arises in its place is not just peace, it is love. A love that is not sentimental, but sacred. Not a feeling, but a knowing. Vedanta teaches us that wisdom and love are not two things. They are one. To know the self is to love all that is. And to love truly is to see oneself in all. The two eyes of the Buddha are wisdom and compassion. So the recognition of consciousness isn't just a philosophical breakthrough, it is the doorway to a new world. A world not built on fear and division, but on awareness, unity, and compassion. And perhaps that is what